All right, it's midnight. Well, it's almost midnight here at California Speedway. Okay, Auto Club Speedway. David Malsher, editor RACER. Marshall Pruett, jack of all trades at RACER. I'm not sure who I am. It's too late. We're going to wrap up this race, boys. And I had to think Will Power won the race and said something I thought for the last 40 laps. If you didn't like this, you don't like IndyCar racing. Dixon wins the championship. Castro Neves gives a valiant effort. And Power finally wins a 500-mile race on an oval and looks like a badass that he is for the last half hour. What do you take away from this first and foremost, Marshall? Scott Dixon?
Scott Dixon earned it. That's what we said in our event preview. We had Helio Castroneves, who we all respect, we all love. He did a great job this year from start to finish. Did he excel at any one point throughout the year? Maybe not. Dixon, first half of the season, wasn't much there. Team wasn't there. Engines weren't there. Pocono won, destroyed everybody. Brilliant. This is the way you should win a championship. Go out and take it. That's what he did.
I always like the fact that the guy that won the most races was the champion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's the way it should be. And I mean, hell, you saw Dixon tonight. It was only now and again that he actually backed off. I mean, for the Hondas clearly didn't have the legs of the Chevy tonight, and yet there were frequent times where he was the leading Honda driver. And he was setting pretty good time, like 2:13.9s at the same time as Willie P was doing the same with the Chevy. So I mean, he was giving it as good as he got, but we had these engine overheating dramas with crap getting into the radiators, so he used his head as well.
There was one time when Castro Neves was leading, Marshall. Scott Dixon's running 16th, but you still didn't get the feeling there was so many laps to go, and you just figured, well, Dixon's not going to do anything. He's just biding his time. And then Castro Neves had some misfortune. I think him and Kimball got together, and that knocked his front wing loose, and I think that was probably a game-set match.
Very much so. The first half of the race, I mean, all the Hondas looked like it was just a Chevy party. Looked like there was nothing there. They finally started to dial things, and as David said, the temperature issues for the Chevy cars, especially Andretti's, don't know why them in particular, but they certainly had overheating issues. And as we saw towards the second half of the race, the fortunes were completely reversed. I mean, my prediction the first half was, wow, congratulations, Elio. And as we're getting towards the end, I'm like, what was that in the first half of the race? I don't even know. Total reversal.
What about our boy Will Power? You've done a lot of ghostwriting for Mr. Power. He said it was the biggest win of his career, and I was like, really, the biggest?
I think in terms of a hurdle overcome for both him and also Dave Faustino as well, who has been convinced that he's got good oval setups. And you look at Kentucky 2011, as Will referred to in the press conference, where wherever he was, he could get himself to the front. He had that dominant car again tonight. We were just waiting for something to go wrong or for him to get caught up in the incidents. And for once, it actually went right. And his car looked quite supple over the seams as well, whereas there are other cars skating around quite a bit. And he just nailed it. He drove like Tony Kanaan, just badass, hard-edged, wouldn't take crap from anyone.
Was the perfect teammate for a while because if Castro Neves was leading, he was the wingman trying to keep Dixon behind him. And then when Elio faltered a little bit and he came on, he took control of the race. Okay, I picked Ed Carpenter to win the race. For his third straight year, he was going to win the finale. He only finished second. Tony Kanaan was third. And they both did a good job, no doubt about it. But the guys that really impressed us tonight, Charlie Kimball, who was clearly maybe the fastest car of the last third of the race. Jerry Hildebrand, who overcame a one-lap penalty and was second for a while. And mayor of Hinchtown, Hinchcliffe, he gets 2 laps down and storms back to finish 4th or 5th. So, most impressive guy for you tonight.
Charlie Kimball, not just tonight, this season. I didn't think Chuck had it in him. I mean, I have to admit, coming into this season, again, his third, I'm like, good kid. He's going to be a valuable guy. We'll have him around for a while, but is he really that badass? This year, he's shown us that he has that extra gear. Personality-wise, as mellow as it comes, not going to say anything crazy, but what he did out on the racetrack was a little, threw on the Superman cape, put on a show.
Well, and he kind of, Townsend Bell said it best, he kind of elevated the Ganassi B team into just the Ganassi team.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Charlie's great. But I also want to give props to J.R. Hildebrand. Yet again, Brian Herder Autosport had a great car here, and he took full advantage of it. During the period of the race where Will was leading and Scott was second, Hildebrand was a lap down, but he wasn't losing anything to Will, and Scotty Dog couldn't pass him either. So clearly that car worked, and unfortunately he had his engine blow up on exactly the same lap as our other hero, Mr. Kimball. So, unbelievable. But he's clearly got it in him, and I hope that attracts some attention to him for during the off season.
We also be remiss if we don't give Alex Tagliani big props. Yeah. Filling in for Dario Franchitti, did a hell of a job, was leading the race for a while. Lost to come out of 2, didn't do much damage, but knocked him out of the race. Sadly, we won't see Bronny Tagliani probably that much next year unless he gets to run the Indy 500. Give her props.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, Marshall, you're the engine guy. Chevy and Honda, 9-9 going into this race, and we saw what happened at Poco. Honda got their butt kicked in qualifying, and they came storming back in the race and swept the podium. And here you kind of felt maybe that was going to be until, like you said, it was so obvious for a while that it was a Chevy show. Why?
They have phenomenal top end. You saw in the restarts that the Hondas definitely didn't spool up as well as they had hoped. Low end, if we're talking like coming off a hairpin, that's where the Hondas really have that punch coming, initial acceleration. But they're already accelerating quite heavily. They're at a high speed, so when they're coming back to throttle for restart here, they're not in that. Their power is not sitting where they need it to be. Chevy as well, just in terms of top end, that's where those things sing. So that's something that really stood out. And if you also think about on the manufacturer championship standpoint, with all the engine changes going on, we went into this race with four Hondas that were capable of winning the championship for them, and 12 Chevys. So just on the numbers, it was always going to be a Chevy win. Chuck Kimball, though, until that motor blew, he could have been the spoiler. I was going to
say he would get a nice bonus and a new Honda. Do you think that's too confusing for the fans to figure out? What do you mean? If Scott Dixon would have won the race, he wouldn't have won the championship for Honda? I just think I get the Ted grid spot penalty rule. That confuses the fans. But I hate the fact that, just like Marshall said, they were completely beat almost before the race started.
Yeah, I despise anything that involves it being confusing to the walk-up fans that don't follow it all year but come to it for a local event. Yeah, but that's because you're old.
Well,
but I also want to point out in Chevy's, basically the amount of yellows rendered this not a fuel mileage race at all because people could, splash and dash whenever they wanted. So, it came down to pure horsepower, and Chevy had it, like Marshall says, right at the top end.
Boys, this race is kind of like when we used to go to Michigan and Ontario, or big ovals. You're always like, you kind of hold your breath. But when you're going as fast as these guys have been going, and you're as loose as they looked like they were, and the cars dancing around and stuff, television doesn't do it justice because hanging on and the way that as hard as they raced each other and guys banging wheels, probably at least 30 passes for the lead on the racetrack, not in the pits. A lot of crashes, an awfully lot of. I mean, this is a nice night for one person, the Delora Company.
Ooh, yeah, our friend Justin Wilson had a hard hit. We saw him wiggle and not only crashed, then got hit by Vautier. We had Servia who was out. We have Joseph Newgarden who was, doing the Days of Thunder, trying to, aim for the middle. And unfortunately, he hit Servia really hard. We had Munoz crash. We had Saavedra spin. That took out Pippa Mann, who was innocent on that end. We had et cetera, et cetera. It was a tough night. Justin especially. David can speak to that a little bit. He actually did come away with some injuries. So great for our Aussie race winner. Great for our Kiwi champion. But also we have some friends who are lumped up pretty good.
What's the latest on Justin, David?
Stefan texted me just to let me know that basically he's got a small pelvic fracture and they're going to do some more scans on his back. But, fingers crossed, the back that he injured at Mid-Ohio 2 years back hasn't been affected. But, I mean, the guy's, he carries less padding because he's, 6 foot, or 9 foot, 6'12", yeah. And, I would have been scared for him if he had like Franchitti-style shunt at Houston. Thankfully, he didn't. But yeah, I also want to give props to Delara for the wheel tethers because my heart was in my mouth when I saw Servia with a wheel like that. And no, they did exactly what they did and just folded around the nose. And that's good. Relatively unscathed considering this is a 215, 216 mile an hour track. Thank God everyone's relatively okay.
The thrill show of the night though was Munoz, Carlos Munoz, the rookie. Townsend Bell and Wally kept saying, it's going to be this lap. He can't run that low. He's going to run out of tires. He's going to snap loose and crash. It's going to happen. And he did, but, I mean, he was putting on a show. He got to the front. It was only his third IndyCar race. Marshall will tell you, Probably he's already written about it, but probably going to be at Andretti next year, it looks like. And he's Colombian, and he's got a little bit of Montoya in him. He's pretty damn exciting. He was funny on his interview after the race. He goes, I may have to calm down a little bit. Oh, just a little.
I love the kid. It's just complete hunter-killer mentality. He definitely doesn't speak a whole lot of English, but when he gets in the car, he speaks the good old language of speed. The kid's a badass, without question. You'd rather have a kid who has that speed, has that aggression, and dial him down a little bit than that person where you're going, all right, so you're gonna have a career of 8th place finishes. How do we make you faster? That kid has the ingredient. Just again, as he even admitted, a little bit softer, but I can't wait to see him next year.
And he won the Indy Lights race.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a fantastic job in the Indy Lights race, kept everyone under control. And our friend Sage Karam, who we should have had here, but I think it's probably past his bedtime. So he did a great job. He became our Firestone Indy Lights champion today. And we'll speak to him in the off-season.
And a tip of the hat to Firestone. They started this program in 1991, the Indy Lights Series. We saw a lot of great champions through the years come through Indy Lights and Toyota Atlantic. Still wish we had that series too. David Malsher,
Yeah.
How do you remember 2013?
The year that Scott Dixon had an awful first half of the season, only got one podium, and then kicked ass in the middle. And even though he had a couple of horrible results at Baltimore and where was the other one? Sonoma, obviously. He still came back and won by a handsome margin. And it's also the year that we discovered that wasn't good enough for Chip and that he wanted to switch to Chevy engines. Okay, fair enough.
Good luck. Marshall?
10 different winners. The little guys kicking butt. First half of the season, for the most part, we saw the big teams flex their muscles to close out the season. Mike Conway shows up, wins a race. Pagano takes 2. I mean, just Sato wins. I love that aspect of the year. That's what IndyCar should be. With this car, should be something where you can, even if you're a small team, come out and perform. And I'll piggyback what David said about Dixie. I rate the guy as the best of his generation. Period. He doesn't have all the titles that he deserves, but I'm so glad that he got number 3, and hopefully some of that automatic respect that some of the other multi-time champions get. I hope people start to realize that this guy is phenomenal.
And still a kid, not even 40 yet. I'm going to remember 2013 as this was the greatest season. In the 45 years I've covered IndyCar racing, this was the greatest season in terms of every time you went to a racetrack, you had no idea who was going to win. Just like tonight. Somebody said, who's going to win? I said, how the hell would you know? How would I know? Nobody knew, and that's what's cool about this series. You don't know who's going to win. A lot of guys are competitive, and next year ought to even be better.